Hi, guys. This is Ray Ferguson with Boots in Business, and this is episode number 4. The first couple of episodes, first 3 episodes, were all about the mindset and getting business started for you and kind of some things you need to be thinking about. Well, today I'm getting into my favorite subject ever, getting into real estate. Okay. And I want to talk about some of the simple things you need to be thinking about before you get into the real estate business, or maybe you're already into it. Some things that can help take you to that next level. And it doesn't matter if you're in the military, if you're out of the military, or associated with the community in some way. But the real estate market for me has been amazing over the last 3 decades that I've been actually investing in it. I started out with the fourplex that I bought with my VA loan. A lot of people don't know that you can do that, but you sure can. If you're going to live in that fourplex, or duplex or a triplex, you can actually buy an investment property as your first property or as any of your properties, as long as you have your VA loan. I did it with my first property ever. Had a real small 1-bedroom apartment inside of that fourplex. I rented it out, and it was very tight living. But for me and my family at the time, actually just me and my wife, it was fine. It was a good way for us to get started. But that's how I got my feet. That's how I got my teeth cut into the real estate business. I bought a fourplex right off the bat. Then I bought a small house. And then after that, believe it or not, I bought a 12-unit apartment building. And then I sold it. But I'll get into all that later. What I really want to get into today is kind of working with you and your mindset on why do you want to get into real estate? Well, I would tell you because Boots in Business is really targeted and focused on the military. And as you're going to transition out, maybe you're in the military now or been a part of it, but if you still have a BAH, if you still have that housing allowance coming in, that is tax-free money. Okay, that is money that you have given by the government to live for you or you and your family, and you can turn around and use that as an investment tool for wealth down the road. A lot of people use it to rent an apartment, to rent a house, which I'm perfectly fine with. But there comes a time, I think, in your military career to where you say, you know what, I need to start thinking about the future. Let's buy a house. It may not be in the perfect condition. Let's buy it and save us a little bit of money in the long run. But at the same time, let's figure out where to buy this house. Let's turn around and see where we can have this house located to where we can rent it out once we leave out of here, and find a really good real estate agent, to come in and market it for us, whether we want to sell it or if you want a real estate manager to come in and manage this for you. These are things you need to be thinking about as you're buying that first house, especially if you're in the military, because as you know, you can move at the drop of a hat. You can deploy at the drop of a hat. It's one of those things that it's risky for the military side, but if you've got a backup plan when you get started in the real estate business, I think you're going to be just fine, but you've got to think through that. So let's talk about a little bit why you really need to get into the real estate business. Kind of look at your housing allowance, again, as being an investment tool that the government's given you to turn around and buy your house, rent your house, whatever it is that you want to do. I like the philosophy of renting, or actually the first year or so that you're on a military base, rent a house, live on post housing, do those type of things. But what I also recommend is that you turn around and start looking in the community, working with a real estate agent, and say, hey, you know what? I really want to buy a house, and I want to move from this rental house to an investment property, or a property that me and my family can move into, but we want to make it a rental once we leave out of here. Or maybe you want to sell it at a higher price. Maybe you can buy it at a lower price now. Here we are at the beginning of 2024, and the interest rates are probably somewhere in the 7 to 8% range. And if you're going to buy a house, even though you can use your VA loan and do no money down to buy the property, you still have that 7 or 8% loan that's in there over 20, 30 years, however you set it up. And oh, by the way, if you don't put like, I think it's 10 to 20% down, you're going to be paying PMI, which is that insurance, the mortgage insurance that you're going to have to pay. That's very hard to shake off your loan for a long time. So that's something. And as we get some folks in here to talk about this on our podcast, we're going to be explaining what PMI is and some things you need to do, like put money down if you need to. But that PMI is hard to get rid of. But if you want to make it into a rental property, if you're paying 6 to 7% interest on it, guess what? It's going to be hard for you to cash flow on that property. Now, my philosophy is I always like to have a property that has good equity and good cash flow. I like both. I don't like one or the other. I like both. So let me explain what those are. If I have good equity, okay, it means that I've bought the property, and let's say that the property appraised at $250,000. Well, I kind of want to be all in at about the $200,000 mark. I want to have $50,000 cushion, 250 minus 200,000 in equity. Okay, now equity is just paper money that you have that a banker will look at, and he'll say that that's an asset for you, and you'll know that that's an asset for you and your family. But if I bought the property at $120,000 and then we rehabbed it and put money into it, maybe up to $80,000, and I've got $200,000 all in this property, and let's just say it's worth $250,000 when I'm all said and done, I've got $50,000 in equity built into that property. Okay, so the bigger spread of equity, the better it is for you and your family. And you can actually borrow against that. The bigger your equity gets down the road, you can have home equity lines or things like that. You can actually borrow against that property, borrow against that equity down the road to invest in another property for you and your family to go live into. Okay, so that's a strategy. And I'll get into that later in the series. But understand that you got to have equity, and the other thing is cash flow. Now, if you're living in the house and you're using your BAH and your, let's just say your BAH is $2,000 a month, and you know your mortgage, insurance, and taxes, PITI, principal, interest, mortgage, and principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Okay, PITI. When it's all said and done, let's just say that is somewhere in the $1,500 range. Okay, so you're on a monthly basis all in at about $1,500. That's your taxes, insurance, and everything. Well, if you're bringing in $2,000 a month in BH, which is tax-free, okay, and you're paying the $1,500 out, okay, it's not really cash flow because it's your money, but that's you've got that spread right there, $400 or $500, okay. But let's say that you wanted to rent the property out. And this is where cash flow really comes in. Because on the cash flow side of the house, if you can rent that house out for $2,200, okay, and you're only paying $1,500 out a month, and then you add in some maintenance, you add in property manager fee, like when you leave and move on to your next base and PCS, let's just say that's $1,700 all in with the manager, some maintenance, and then your mortgage, your PITI there. Guess what? You can have $400 or $500 in cash flow coming in every single month. Now, doesn't sound like a lot of money. You're not going to get rich off of that $400 a month. But what happens if you were to keep that house for 20, 30 years and get it paid off by the tenants that live in those houses that you've picked up throughout your military career? And now you're able to turn around and sell them, or maybe you turn around and borrow against them and start your own company, whatever it is that you want to do. But that's an asset that you're building that got started with the money that the government gave you for housing allowance. I mean, I've been doing this for years. And oh, by the way, so is a lot of other military people, but it's trying to get the word out that investing in real estate is very smart for a lot of the real estate community because you have tax-free housing allowance coming in. So if you don't take that money and just give it to somebody for rent where you get really nothing in return, you're building their equity, you're building their cash flow, but you're not building your own. So my personal philosophy is rent, live on the base, do things like that you need to do when you first get into a base, okay? When you first PCS, get into a base, do that until you find out about your job situation, if you're married, what your wife's situation is going to be like, and get your family stabilized. Because as we know, when you PCS, that is like one of the first things you got to get done. You got to get the family going. You got to get the kids in school. You got to get the bags unpacked. You got to get them to come in. You got to do your checks on all your boxes and bags and everything else. And you got to go through the painstaking thing of, doing the claim against all the housing folks with everything they broke, right? And it's a pain in the ass. It's a pain in the butt. But guess what? You do that and get your family settled. And then about a year later, because that's about the end of your 1-year lease, if you lease the property, or if you're living on the base, be looking for properties in the neighborhood that you think would rent well and do well once you leave. So in other words, they've got really good schools, because that's one of the biggest draw factors, right? If you've got kids, you're looking for great schools. Guess what? So is everybody else in the military. So buy in the right areas. Buy in those areas that over a long-term period of time is going to be great. So 10, 20, 30 years, if you still own that house, then guess what? They probably still have really good schools. You would hope so. Or maybe they've even gotten better. But if you buy the cheap house in the cheap area that has bad schools, you're going to continue to have a problem with those properties. One, because at least that's what I've seen throughout my military career, because that's where I started buying, was in those cheaper areas, because that's what I could afford at the time. But I wouldn't want to live in some of the houses that I personally bought and rented out over the years. I'll just tell you. But they made good money, cash flow wise. They made good money equity wise, and my company owned them, and I was okay with that. It wasn't like slumlording or anything like that, but it was a couple notches above that. It was nice houses, but it's not really where I'd want to be, mainly because of the schools for my kids. But if I'm in the military, and I know I want to be around great schools, and most military bases don't have schools on the base anymore. They go off post somewhere. That may be a good area for you to look at investing in, because like right here at Fort Greg Adams, they go to Prince George High School, Prince George School District. Well, and that seems to be pretty good. And I can look up great schools and look up the type of schools that they have. But a lot of the military folks send their kids there. Guess what? Maybe that's an area I need to look at having a rental property in, which means that if I'm renting a place or if I'm living on the base now, why wouldn't I at least look outside the base, find a realtor and look outside the base and say, you know what? I really need to find a real estate investment here in this area, because the schools are nice. Seems like there's a lot of military that live here in this community. A lot of retirees is another thing to look for. Not too much crime, right? You're looking for all the signals and all the flags, either green flags or red flags, that make you want to live there. If you didn't want to live there, maybe it's probably not a really good investment for you, unless you just want to become an investor and just buy the property and rent it out. You could do that. But I'm talking about if you're living on the base right now, or if you're renting a property and you could turn around and buy a property to where you move your family into it. To me, that's an amazing way to use your BEH. That's an amazing way to, first get your family settled when you get to a military base, and then transition into that new house. And I'll give you an example. Got a buddy here at Fort Greg Adams that recently just did that. And I told him I wanted to bring him here on the interview. He's like, for what? I just bought a house. Well, he was coming to our real estate meetings that I have here on a monthly basis here in the Colonial Heights, Petersburg area. And, he was interested in buying a house and doing exactly what I'm talking about here. Him and his family, I think they live up on the base, up on Fort Greg Adams. And he recently just bought a property, but it needed some work. It needed new flooring. They wanted to update a few things. And so he bought that house with the intention of putting money into it, fixing it up a little bit, then moving his family into that house. So they've got a really nice house. He's already done the work to where it's really nice looking inside, and, made it the way that he wanted. But I guarantee what he really got out of it was he got equity and he got cash flow, along with a very nice house for him to live in that he could turn around and make into a rental once he leaves the military base. I really think that that's the key for this with military people. Now, if you're not in the military, I get it. You don't have housing allowance coming in anymore, but you should still look at the philosophy of finding houses in nice areas with good schools, and maybe need some work, but maybe not a full rehab right off the bat. Now, my philosophy in real estate is you start small and you grow big. You start small and you grow big. Get your teeth cut on small properties and things of that nature. Learn how to do things yourself if that's what you're good at. I will be honest, I am not good at doing drywall or any of the electrical or plumbing. Honestly, I hire all that out. I don't know any of that stuff. I know what to look for sometimes, but I know the experts. Okay, I bring in inspectors to take a look at my house. And we're going to get into a lot of that in this series about what to look for in these houses, how to actually get good equity out of it, because guess what? You found that there were some problems that you can fix, but maybe the buyer, once they find out about it and you like, I don't think I want to buy this property anymore, you use that as leverage and get a little bit lower price off of it. People are doing that to us when we're selling properties all the time. I do the exact same thing because I know that I've got to put money in to fix it. If the seller doesn't know when they're selling that house that they got these problems, I bring in a really good inspector to take a look at it. I will get them to turn around and make me a full-blown report. Maybe I pay a couple $100 to get that really nice report with the pictures. I turn around and give it to my realtor, or if I'm buying the property myself, because I feel comfortable buying a property myself, I don't always need a realtor to help me out. I would turn around and give that to the seller and say, hey, Mr. Seller, there's $30,000 worth of work that needs to be done here. What do you want to do about it? My solution to that is I'm going to ask you to take $20,000 off this property. Let me buy it. I will come in and fix all these problems. So you've just disclosed information to them. They're supposed to disclose it if they try to sell it to somebody else, which most people don't. But I'm just letting you know that that's a way for us as a buyer and keep your eyes open. So, that's what I like to do in the military world. And you got to change your mindset. You got to change your mindset about getting into properties and real estate investments or a scheme and all that kind of stuff. If you do it right, real estate investments would be the best thing that you can do as an investment vehicle, period. If you do it right, you do it smartly, and you don't make stupid mistakes. Now, I would tell you throughout this entire series of Boots in Business, I'm going to be talking about a lot of the flaws, a lot of the areas that I failed when I got into real estate. This building that I'm sitting in, okay, it's a nice commercial building. I flipped with my business partner, Jason. I flipped a couple small houses in Petersburg, right outside the Fort Lee gate at the time. Now it's Fort Gregg Adams, but right outside the gate, we flipped 2 houses. Actually, we flipped 3 houses. And then I turned around and took the cash from that the proceeds that came from me. I put that into the down payment along with the small amount of money that I borrowed from my buddy. I turned around and put that money into this. So we've actually got an office space for my roofing company. But I've got 3 commercial tenants up in the front of this. And then I can do things like this, like run my podcast in. The Chamber of Commerce, his office is actually in here as well. So I've taken money off the real estate side. I've either borrowed against it or we've sold the properties, and I turned around and put that into a bigger project. So my philosophy with getting after real estate investments with the military, while you're still in, or maybe you're out, but use your VA loan. Use your VA loan. You can buy a single family house, a duplex, triplex, and all the way up to a fourplex. And there's rules on it, okay, but you need to check into it if you still have your VA loan. And basically what you do is go check with the banker and let them run your information. You go into the va.gov website and check your own information to find out if you're eligible. But if you are, why are you still renting a property? If you still have a VA loan eligibility, why are you still renting a property when you can put your money, every month you put your money in, you're paying down that balance on that mortgage. And so you have a nice steady house that you own instead of having to put up with rent and things like that. Now, nothing's wrong with renting. I'm not trying to make it like that, but I'm saying invest in yourself, invest in properties. And if you're still in the military and you got that tax-free housing allowance coming in, and I keep saying tax-free because a $1,500 BH housing allowance is really like saying it's $1,800, $1,900 because you don't pay taxes on that $1,500. The government's not going to tax that. Okay, so that's really like you getting buying power of $1,800, $1,900 a month because you're not having to pay those taxes. And if you stay in the military long enough, or if you start real estate investing, you're going to see that taxes are going to be your biggest drain of your financial worth. Taxes are going to just take away from you. But one of the reasons why I bought this building is because I get to depreciate it every single year. And we'll talk about that later too. But I get to take depreciations off. So I think with this building, I get almost $22,000 in tax benefits every single year, no matter if I make a profit or not, just because I own this building. And I get to deduct that from properties I'm flipping or money I make in businesses or my retirement check or whatever. I mean, the money that comes into my account for me and my wife, I take the financial depreciation from this property and I get to put it to my assets that I'm selling or doing business with and things like that. I get to depreciate and get to take that off every single year of my taxes. Okay. So I know I get passionate about real estate. I get passionate about business, and Boots and Business is all about business and it's about real estate. Okay. So I'm going to talk and intertwine a lot of these different subjects, but I do that for a reason because I've been living it for years. And even like within my 29 years of being in the military, I think I've flipped somewhere between 23 to 25 houses, what I figured up the other day. But it wasn't that I was going out to be an active investor. It was I bought a house when I lived on a base, and then I turned around and sold it, rented it out, and then sold it down the road and made a profit off of it. Okay, I remember in Leavenworth, Kansas, I bought a house, and this happened, and I'm ashamed to say it, but I actually bought a massive house, like 5-bedroom, big house. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Right near the Speedway down in Kansas City, if you've ever been there, a place called Tonganoxie. Never heard of it in my life, but it was near Leavenworth. I was teaching Command General Staff College at the time. And I bought this house, and my wife and daughter, after I bought it, my wife and daughter was like, I have the heebies in that house. Like, what do you mean? I have the heebie-jeebies in that house. So we went down in the basement, and they just didn't feel right. They felt some spirit. Then, are you kidding me? This is a massive house, and we're going to live here. I'm not going to live here. Are you kidding? I mean, I was floored. So I got lucky, and we ended up buying it, but ended up buying a second house up near the base, up near Leavenworth. And we actually lived in that one. But I ended up renting out the house in Tonganoxie out for a couple of years. But it was so big, massive house. We had a problem at one time to where the power went out and the water pipes burst inside the house. And so that's a story for another day. But my point is, I was investing where I was living, okay? I was investing as I moved from base to base. As I PCS'd, I was investing. And I may have rented at the beginning, but then I turned around and bought something while I was there. And if I would have kept all the houses, I'd have a massive portfolio now. But I sold them as I went from base to base sometimes and made money off of them. And that got me into other projects and bigger things and started other companies, okay? So figure out where it is you want to be. Figure out for you and your family some safety nets, some things that you can do. And sometimes you don't even have to have a lot of money to get started in this, although it does help so it helps on your cash flow side. But just take two things away. If you're going to invest in property, you want to have equity and you want to have cash flow. And if you don't have both, walk away from it and do your math in advance.